Hello, and if you are joining us for the first time, welcome. We are Remarkist, communities of fans who watch television shows and movies together virtually, but as if we're in the same room, gathered around the same television. We do this using the Clubhouse app, and we would love to have you join us for future watches. You can simply make an account on Clubhouse and search for our name, Remarkist, to find our club. Or if you'd like more information about the project as a whole, please visit remarkist.com to learn lots more about who we are and what we do. As for our recordings, remember that we always get our episodes started but paused at the 0-second mark and count down to pressing the play button together at the same time. That way, our experience can be as synced up as possible. You can pause this for a moment to get that set up, or if you're ready to go, let's get this thing started.
Recording.
On 3.
And we're going to do it on 3. 1, 2, 3.
I thought that was actually really practical and nice.
The idea that they're giving away their stuff, or they're putting stuff in the will for her,
or that you can like put post-its on everything.
Right.
Like, yeah, that's actually like,
that of course got me thinking. You know, just in terms of the new the revivals, whether or not that comes back, right? Because, well, I guess
they didn't really like get into that in the revivals. Also, she's not dead, so
right. It would still be right,
yeah.
But isn't she sort of giving away stuff?
Yeah.
When I was younger, I went to my grandparents' house and was kind of like, when I was watching this season, I went to my grandparents' place and kind of like began to stick post-it notes and certain things, and my mother's like, "What are you doing?" I was like, "We did it in Gilmore Girls." She wasn't too happy.
Sally is back. How are folks feeling about that? I think that she should have the birthday at the grandparents.
I think that her mom was being so unreasonable. I think, John, you're like really into this concept of them like doing whatever Emily wants.
I'm not.
I don't know. I mean, I feel like that's her night.
But no exceptions can be made ever? Like,
well, I mean, I think she wants to experience the birthday too, right?
Yeah, that's a good point. That's kind of the point of this whole episode, but you should just keep watching.
All right.
Yeah, you just wait, John.
Wow, is that a real thing?
Cross pollination is
called
yes.
pine
Is
berries.
that a real thing? No.
Pine berries are. Every Michelle and Jackson interaction is pure effing gold throughout the entire show. I love it. I'm obsessed with it.
You know what's funny is that the subtitles say presents like gifts mandatory, but I'm sure she means presents like your presence is mandatory. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if she said presents. I always thought it meant gifts too. Yeah. Huh. Probably does actually.
See, I think that that's so sweet.
That is sweet. You're not wrong. The bong?
No, just the idea that she wants to buy her something that she knows that Lorelai would get and that she knows she would want. That she's sort of admitting that she isn't good at getting things for Rory, but wants to get her something that she wants, which is more important.
But your timing was impeccable.
Oh, right. Well, maybe our sync was off a little bit.
I think Emily would be really into legalized marijuana.
Oh, Chad Michael Murray. Chad Michael Mudface. Hey. Kid went to my high school, yo.
I'm with Emily.
I'm sorry, no 16-year-old would carry that around.
I think 16-year-olds now have all kinds of weird purses.
I just don't know if Rory would carry that around. At least that doesn't seem like the Rory we've been.
Yeah, that's not a Rory thing.
It sounds like that was more of like a spiting Emily thing, right?
Yeah. I think that's something that Lorelai would like because she's quirky. Like she really only thinks of herself.
Yes.
I didn't really see Rory wearing that.
I was thinking the exact same thing. At least not. That's not the Rory that I've been introduced to so far. Somebody wearing those.
Yeah, maybe
I had something just like that. That's just me. Oh, tell her the truth, Rory.
She really feels so obligated to manage her mother's feelings way too much.
Totally. That's why I don't really see this as Lorelai's story. Like I don't see Lorelai as the protagonist. I see Rory as the protagonist. We were talking about that the other day, like who's the protagonist, and I think that it's Rory for that reason.
I think that this is a very long show, and we will see.
Fair point.
The stuff people said about switching makes a lot of sense. Also, I'm going to be quiet now because this is iconic.
I definitely did that as a monologue for an acting class in college.
I love how awkward she is around Dean still. Luke wrote on the balloons. She, that little mouth.
Oh my God, the happy birthday.
Hey, I would have had the same reaction she did. Like, come on.
Same.
Like, if the guy I like did that, actually had happened to me, but come on, any girl in that state would react that way.
React what way?
Like Rory did, get all like.
Oh yeah.
Blush,
I thought that was sweet that he did that. That he said happy birthday. You mean that he said happy birthday to her, right?
Well, that and like she likes him and he's dreamy and. I mean, you're not a girl, John, but.
No, I'm team Dean all the way right now.
Just like.
Yeah, first season Dean is great.
Is he though? Is he really?
I mean, he seems smart and cute at first.
Let him live in Fantasyland for a season.
I mean, they do make him very smart, and then they just like forget that they did that.
Yeah, okay, I get it. This is lame for Rory.
Wait till they get to the kids' side of the party.
Yeah, I'm already dreading that.
This still gives me anxiety like 20 years later.
Jeez.
Incredible.
That is one part of the party I would like, the envelopes with the check.
They all just give her some money. I love that. And then they all
I'd
just
be
walk
okay
away.
with that.
Oh, good Lord.
No, don't do it, Roy.
No.
Run.
Is Paris here?
And there you go.
It's like you hear the Jaws theme playing, and then
I'm guessing that there's no such thing as a team, Tristan.
He was supposed to probably be a bigger character. I mean,
don't know.
Paris is with the fan club. She's the president of the Team Tristan fan club.
I was
I mean,
Tristan for a slight second.
I mean, his character left the show. I mean, it looked like they were like, well, I'm not going to push that, but his character leaves the show because he had a spot on Dawson's Creek, and then One Tree Hill later.
One Tree Hill came. Well, it was One Tree Hill that he left for. He
I
did
thought
a
it was
spot on Dawson's Creek before.
And there's the Lorelai and Rory coming out.
I'll be Team Lucas if you want to talk about Tristan.
One Tree Hill, sorry. I'm a big Duran Duran fan, so I always loved that she had all the Duran Duran stuff.
I never understood how they got everybody to go out of the party in a line.
Emily signaled with an air horn.
Oh, all right. Not happy about that.
See?
Bruised egos.
Yes, I have that. I know. I gotta watch. I can't make judgments like just. But I mean, you know, I'm human.
True.
Because you humiliated her first.
That was a good scene.
So you're going to get yet another Harvard brochure? I just want to see if they change.
I love that nickname, Popcorn.
We're making plenty of.
And the ice thaws a little.
I wanted one of these so bad.
I feel like we never see that ever again.
But notice that she gave her a very expensive gift after telling Emily not to spend money.
Also, that's a real Mac or like an Apple, whatever, the iBook. I looked it up.
Yeah, the actual product. Yeah, because we were talking about like what were real products and what weren't. Yeah, that was probably a real Apple.
And it has.
But they would have had to clear that though. That was sort of my point, is that they're not going to just put random products in shops, because you have to clear any product with the legal department, and it's just a hassle. So they just won't do it unless it's a very important important product for the scene.
Michelle is having a ball in the back.
Yes.
John is thrilled.
You can tell I'm into Emily. I'm into that character. I think it's largely because I just assumed she was like a Cruella de Vil type character, but now I'm like, I just see how rounded she is.
And that Kelly Bishop is just a queen in general.
Richard's face.
Definitely want to talk about that after the episode.
Of all the books that child has, she gave him a Cosmo.
The Richard and Rory scenes are some of my favorites, but like all the way throughout, they're consistent.
Can I just point out that the box says waffle, not apple?
Good catch.
Yep. I mean, I had to reshoot a full episode, or not a full episode, but like a whole scene. I remember because they had a name in the shot, like on the background on a wall somewhere, that hadn't been cleared, and so they just paid to bring everybody back and do the scene again. Oh my God, this is very sad. Grandparents be grandparents, man. They're way more pliable, I think, than you would assume. I mean, I think they really did enjoy themselves, right?
Yeah.
This moment kills me in the car every time.
Oh my God.
Right?
Yeah, that's really sad.
My favorite part.
Like mother, like daughter.
It's like Bye Bye Birdie.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to imagine. It's hard to imagine who's coming next for Rory. You know, like I mean, I of course know because I I know the other actors, but like as of right now, it feels like the world is just this guy. I can't imagine much better, really.
I think that's what it's like when you're that age, and you know, it's kind of like that perspective. You know, the first time you fall in love, it's like, whoa, you know,
Yeah.
earth shattering. And of course, you look back and you're like, that was probably dumb, but
that episode is easily my favorite so far. That was so emotional. That episode, like I'm still like totally choked up.
Aww.
I mean,
That kind of goes back to what I was saying before with like the best of both worlds type thing, where like the stiff and like by the book world, and then like Rory's world type thing.
Yeah.
John, I would love to hear your take on the scene where Emily goes up into Lorelai's room and is kind of looking around, and then of course sees that she had broken her leg, and then, you know, we all reacted to the sadness that she later expressed to Richard, saying, you know, I don't feel like I don't know my daughter at all. It just seems almost like she has this longing desire to want to know Lorelai so badly. And I mean, we will later see how Lorelai kind of opens up to her, you know, a little more, but I'd love to hear your thoughts on that.
What I think what's so tragic about it is not that like it's not that it's in that moment you feel like Emily realizes that she doesn't know how to know her daughter, and she feels like maybe she'll never know how to know her daughter, if that makes sense, right? That it isn't necessarily anything that Lorelai's doing specifically. It's that she, I think in that moment, just realize it's similar to when she's there at the store early on and she says like, oh, I don't know how to do this, you know? That sort of, I don't know how to do this. I feel like she realizes that in the room about, I don't know how to do this, in terms of, I don't know how to know my own daughter, know when she's hurt or, sorry, I'm still a little shaky. You can hear my voice. Yeah, that was a very powerful scene. I really can't say much more than that.
It's a really good episode. I mean, I think that your reaction also just like the last scene at the party at Emily's house, you know, when they kind of get into that argument, and it's just it really is, you know, I think a show about all of these relationships. Like it's a show about relationships between mother and daughters, and it's not just the Lorelai Rory relationship, it's the Emily Lorelai relationship too. So it kind of like switches different episodes, different seasons, different scenes, even between like who's kind of the protagonist of that scene. But I do feel like it's a really good, just like multi-generational story.
Yeah, and I definitely buy that it's got things that are unique to mother-daughter relationships, but I feel like it also is generally parent and child relationship, because there's definitely aspects of this that I could relate to, in terms of my relationship with my parents.
Sure, yeah.
I think that sort of, you want them to understand you, but you're not willing to accept that they are from a different time and different world, right? You want your parent to just somehow like teleport their whole life experience like 30 years forward, and they can't. Like they lived in a different time and who they are is made up of all of the experiences that they had in that different world. And I think that's sort of the main thing, is that Emily is who she is because of everything she's experienced up until now, and Lorelai needs her to be able to be something different, and she can't. And then she realizes that in order for her to know Lorelai, who has just sort of walked away from that whole world, that she has to be able to somehow magically become a very different type of person, which is just a lot to ask. And I think that she's realizing that, and realizing how daunting that is, and maybe worried that she'll never really be able to fully. As of right now, I don't know, Matt. I can't imagine how she would.
I think to a degree also too, like Emily, she's realizing that Lorelai is pushing her away and doesn't want her, to have that intimacy with her, as far as that relationship. Because it kind of goes into like what we were discussing, in the previous episode, that as a parent, you have to continuously get to know your child and relearn who that person is, because they're constantly growing and changing. But if your child doesn't want you to know them, like how do you even go about that?
But I think in this episode we see Lorelai try more than once. Like the going shopping, agreeing to go shopping, and like showing her all the different options and just telling her look for stuff for Rory, and then trying to go back after leaving the party, like after trying, Rory tries to apologize and advice, and she goes back to Emily to be like, this is how you get to know her. This is how you get to know this life we're living, is you come and you become a part of it.
Right, but in all fairness to Emily, and clearly I'm showing myself to be a bit of a team Emily here.
I think I know what you're going to say, and I'll agree.
She also does a darn good job of trying. I mean, I did not expect. I'm trying to imagine, like, will Emily show up at that party? And I was kind of convinced that we were going to end the episode on Emily, like all of them having a good time at the party, and Emily sitting in a chair sipping tea in her house, like regretting, but like just unable to bring herself to that. And I was like, whoa, she did, and so I think that she did. And also, Lorelai came shopping with her, but who was the one who said, look, I don't know how to do this, like, will you help me? That's, I think, also kind of pretty big of Emily, right? That's a lot of, I think that's trying.
Sure. Yeah. I think first of all, I want to say that I'm gonna definitely go on fanfiction.net after this, and you can pull down, like, you can basically find any pairing in the world, if you like, any pairing that you can imagine between two characters in a series or in a book. And I'm going to see if there's Emily and Brian because of all this. But
dear God, there's no way there's an Emily and Brian.
I would fall over. But this really reminded me, and I think about this a lot in my own life. But I think that a lot of family conflict and even like conflict in relationships generally comes from wanting to be seen and not feeling seen. And this is really what that's about.
Yeah, totally.
It's like the balance between like how much you want to be seen and see other people that way, and how willing you are to sort of change your habits and step outside of yourself. So, can I say something?
Yeah, please.
Okay, so I think this, as we've talked about, I feel like Emily is kind of centered around this episode, to my knowledge. And I think, like, as we have seen, this is like the first taste of like Emily kind of like trying to like push her, like get out, not out of her shell, but kind of like get out of her like comfort zone, where like she's so wrapped up in like DAR and her luncheons and like maids and like all that. She's trying to get out of her world and realize that like she has a granddaughter that she has to get to know, and that like that type of thing. And we'll see that kind of through like the seasons. But I feel like this was a great episode to kind of jump off of with that kind of notion, because I feel like just with grandparents in general, like my grandparents, may they rest in peace, they, I mean, it was like late 90s, early 2000s, but I think it was the same thing where they try to get into my world as like an 8-year-old of like things that I like, and try to get me things that they knew that like I would like and things like that. So it's kind of interesting to see like the contrast between what was then and what people's grandparents try to do now. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think it's also important to remember that Emily never had the opportunity to really get to know Rory before Friday night dinners, because Lorelai did kind of keep her out of their lives to a certain extent by not actively engaging with her and inviting her to things. I mean, she said it herself. Her mother's never been there to their house that they've lived in for a while now, and that can't be solely Emily's fault.
I agree 1,000%. I think that so much of this episode is kind of portrayed as if like, oh yeah, Emily didn't even try, but we really know from previous episodes, even just from how Lorelai talks about it, that that's not true at all. She definitely didn't want her parents in her life that way, or in that kind of an active role. So like, it's not their fault. It's definitely not Emily's fault that, you know, she doesn't know them that well. That was like really by Lorelai's design. So it kind of does feel shitty that Lorelai is like, oh yeah, you're not even trying. And it's like, hello, like you you just started talking to her again. Like you were, they weren't really in her life. Like think back to the pilot where, you know, they're like, I'm sorry, is it a holiday? Like, why are you here? So yeah.
I think that defends Lorelai though, because that means that they did see her on the holidays. So what kind of interactions were they having on those holidays that they weren't able to find a way to extend their connection past?
Well, that's what I think. I think Lorelai was keeping them at a very far distance, more for herself, not for Rory. I think it was more Lorelai kind of just not wanting to be a part of that world and indirectly making that choice for Rory at the time. But now that she's sort of being drawn in because of her deal with her parents, and now, you know, Emily is trying to make an effort in her strange way that she does it, that she just kind of, I don't know, she's being forced into it a little more. So it's kind of, they get into these fights and arguments over things. And I think, but it's hard to blame Emily completely, or even Richard, because
I have three things to say really quickly. One, something that I have to get in a better habit of remembering to say, we're now in the post-show discussion. So anybody who wants to come up onto the couch and chat with us and add any insights to what we just watched, please raise your hand. Very easy. There's a little hand button there at the bottom, and we'll bring you up here. Secondly, I actually just read somebody here on Instagram Live just said Brian isn't on the fan fiction character list. And then it's got like the oh my god emoji.
I didn't want to tell you. I was like, oh, I'm gonna hurt his feelings.
No, actually, I think that there in all of the years, there's only one piece of Brian fan fiction that I've ever read, and I can't remember where it was. It was somebody sent it to me on Twitter. And it was like really, really well written. And it was something about Brian going to work at the real estate agent.
I was gonna say, was he still a realtor?
Yeah, it was like a realtor. It was like basically like a Brian's like day, like Brian like alone doing his thing on a day, like waking up in the morning and heading out and like just like the whole day. But it was so expertly written, and I've been like trying to find it again. I feel I mean it just was sent to me and I on Twitter, and I just never really archived it. And then since then I was like, God, I gotta find that Brian fan fiction. So just to let you know, somewhere out there on the internet there is a piece of Brian fan fiction that's just like, it's just like a day in the life of Brian without any of the other characters. Brian is doing his thing before he comes home to reconnect with his roommates.
Was he wearing his gold blazer?
Yes, that was sort of the one thing I remember. It was like they added in the gold blazer. And then getting back to what we were talking about here, I think that the fact that she says, "Wow, is it a holiday?" suggests, right, that they've only really seen each other on the holidays, right? But the fact then that Emily like immediately sees the opportunity to get a weekly dinner in, you know, like that, okay, if we pay, we'll get that weekly dinner in, also suggests that Emily, at least Emily for sure, would have liked for there to be more than just holidays, right? Like, and so
Yeah. I agree.
that sort of suggests that really the reason why there haven't been much more than holidays is because Lorelai doesn't want there to be more than holidays.
Well, think about it. Like she said it herself that like she was like a grown up or independent like the minute the stick turned pink. And I mean, I can't relate in that aspect, thank gosh. But I kind of feel like Lorelai needed to be independent, and it's that kind of like you kind of have to make like a sacrifice if you want to be independent and try to make it on your own without help from others. She kind of needed to make that decision. It's like, okay, do I stay where I am and know that I'm going to be miserable just because I'm going to need help and my parents are there? Or do I make that sacrifice of cutting my parents off and trying to make it on my own? Because I have a feeling if she would have stayed at her parents, that she wouldn't have had the colorful life that she has now, where she like went from a maid to running the inn. And so like I kind of feel like she made that choice and she has to live with it, but at the same time like Emily has to realize that like her daughter is independent, and she kind of had to realize that the hard way.
I think to a degree too in this episode we do see a little bit more of Lorelai's sensibility, in the sense that like she's opening up to be more amicable towards her when things are done on her conditions, as far as like her likes and desires. And that it goes along with the whole idea of like, well, you don't see me on, you know, anything but a national holiday when the banks are closed, because those are my terms and conditions, and that's what I want.
Right. So you're suggesting that that's really like what Lorelai says. That's what goes.
Right, exactly. So then like when her mother's trying to make that effort, you know, it's kind of like an all or nothing. And so then that's why she kept going, okay, well, think of pudding, you know, when they're trying to. And her mother didn't understand that. And she was just authentically just trying to relate to her granddaughter and her daughter. But I don't think that Lorelai at this point is very receptive to wanting that relationship with her mother.
So funny. I read it completely the opposite way. I read the fact that Lorelai is so shocked by the pudding as it being one of the genuinely the first times her seeing her mother making an effort. And when I think about what those holidays were like, I kind of picture the same kind of party that they had at the birthday party, where Lorelai and Rory were probably sitting in a corner and felt like they were completely out of place, so they couldn't wait to get out of there, and yet they'd done their duty of showing up for the holiday party.
Yeah, totally. I think all the large gatherings at the Gilmores were just like that. I agree.
I have a quick question about that pudding, because they kept bringing it back, and every time she would sort of throw the pudding thing at Emily. Emily seems like, what are you talking about? And I was almost expecting Emily to be like, I love pudding. Like, I've always loved pudding. Why are you, like, so this idea that Emily was like doing the pudding as a sort of way to, like, if that was the case, wouldn't Emily have recognized that instantly when she's like, the pudding, like, you giving us pudding, like, wouldn't Emily have sort of understood what she was talking about? Whereas the way it was written, Emily seemed like, what pudding? What do you mean? Like,
I think that's what out of context.
Yeah, I think
just because it was out of context.
The pudding. Yeah.
Well, yeah, I think that the days, the time she offered the pudding, Emily, like when they were like, "Wow, Mom, pudding, really?" She reacted to that. But then it's every time it was brought out of context that she had no idea what they were talking about.
Oh, so it's more like she just didn't understand how what she did there with the pudding related to what they're talking about right then.
I think they kind of read more into the pudding than it was really meant to be myself. I mean, and I just think that because I think that sometimes Lorelai looks for things that maybe something's changing with her mother, or their mother's noticing things, and really it's just a coincidence. Her mom may have noticed that they like pudding, so she thought, I'm going to serve pudding, but it wasn't the same reason.
Right,
that Lorelai
right. That's sort of what I was getting at. Like Lorelai was making it seem like Emily just like absolutely could never lower herself to eating pudding, but she just did that day for them, Whereas like, what's the big deal about pudding? Pudding's delicious. So like, I could totally buy that Emily would be into pudding.
I don't know. It seems a little lowbrow.
Really? Oh, I don't know.
Totally.
Agreed.
Well, I would think a bit more that I think that Emily thought they would like the pudding, but it wasn't as much of a revelation that she was trying to. It was more like she just thought, well, I'm just going to give them a dessert they like, but they took it as, oh my God, she's giving us pudding. There's this big thing happening. I don't think it was a big thing to Emily as it was to Lorelai and Rory.
Right.
They just read more into it, is what I meant. And I just. I don't know if Emily really liked pudding or not, but I think that was one of her ways of trying to make an effort, but it didn't seem like a big deal to her. It was just something she was doing.
She was just doing something nice.
Yeah.
But,
yeah, I don't think she thought she was making this like grand, bold gesture. And when it kept getting brought up, she was like, what are you talking about? Like, you know what I mean? Just not that she didn't realize that she gave them a dessert she thought they would like, but I think I agree with Chris that it was just, she gave them a dessert she thought they would like and enjoy, and they did, and that was pretty much the end of it for her, like that's
right. Okay.
That whole interaction.
But although to go back to the earlier point that John made just about the fact that Emily and Richard actually went to the birthday party, and then the fact that they were almost like reaching out, and then when they went shopping, I think it's almost maybe the pudding is kind of alluding to again that reaching out, trying to bridge the gap between their differences, maybe.
Well,
yeah,
here's the
I agree.
question.
And then I think that Emily thinks that she's made more headway and has built a deeper connection through the limited Friday night dinners that they've had, until she goes into Lorelai's bedroom and sees all these things and realizes, wow, like this is. I thought that, we were building a relationship and reconnecting, and really it's kind of all smoke and mirrors.
Yeah, she realized how much she's actually missed in Lorelai's life.
Yeah, in a way, it feels like this is sort of the beginning of them trying to, like, that we actually start here in this episode with the two of them trying to find a relationship. If that's going to happen in this series, I don't know if it will, but if that's part of the storyline, one of the storylines, Lorelai and Emily, it feels like that moment when she's like, I don't know my daughter, is like, okay, and now we begin.
As a little light note, getting off, kind of going off this topic, I kind of liked how we saw just a smidgen of what Paris and Rory's friendship is going to be, because we all know how it starts, obviously.
But not all of us know how it goes.
Well, yeah.
But not all of us know how it goes.
But I love how it's
see just like a smidgen.
We see a smidgen of what I can assume is going to become a different relationship between these two, because that's clearly what that moment feels like.
Yep. I think it shows that Paris to break down her walls if she thinks she has something in common with somebody, and Harvard is something they have in common that she probably didn't really think about before. So she's just kind of trying to ease off a little bit. But I don't know.
I also really like that
Paris.
we get to see a little bit more of the closeness that Rory and Richard are developing. So aside from the conflict that's happening between Rory and Emily and Lorelai and Emily, you know, Rory still has this very individual and intimate relationship that she's building with Richard.
Yeah, and Richard doesn't seem to really need to try to develop that relationship with Rory, right? Like, I actually buy that he was really truly reading that Cosmopolitan magazine, that he actually just got really into it.
He was so great. His facial expressions, like when he first sat down and opened it up, he's like, I love it.
Yeah, he strikes me as a character who doesn't really do anything unless he actually is interested in doing it. And so far, everything that he's been doing with Rory has been, you know, this surprising moment of like, oh, yeah, I want to check this out. This seems interesting, right? Whereas Emily is really like trying. She's trying to find, you know, her way to connect.
I saw that's something in the first episode or two. I'm losing track of like when the golfing was. The golfing episode 3 or 2?
That was episode 3, I think.
So
yeah, that was episode 3.
Yeah, there's this really interesting jump from the pilot where you see Richard seems so indifferent and, you know, almost careless, like not very interested in his granddaughter. And then that first, you know, the golfing episode changes that, but that transformation feels very quick. Like he doesn't really change that much from, I mean, I guess he changes over the course of the series, but that transformation in the first 2 episodes is really interesting to me, where he goes from completely indifferent to very warm and you know, giving her 2 birthday gifts and you know, reading her magazine.
I almost have to wonder if he like had this perception that she was just this little kid that he couldn't have anything in common with, and so that was why he was indifferent. And then going out on that golfing trip, he realized that she's a smart kid and is well read, and you know, there is a lot of common ground there and things that they can both be interested in together.
Yeah, I sort of read
so it kind of sped things up, but I agree, it does seem kind of like it has evolved quickly.
Yeah, but I think that that's part of the character. I think that Richard, if something doesn't interest him, he just tunes out. He strikes me as the type of character he's just in the distance, like just off to the side, reading a paper, thinking about work, doing his thing. And then if something piques his interest, he just suddenly peaks up and you know, somebody mentions a name of a person, for example, right, that he knows or whatnot, he just perks up all of a sudden. And I think that like Rory coming into his life, having all of these aspects to her personality that match his, suddenly just sort of like a little light bulb went off, and he just suddenly was like interested, you know?
Yeah, I think he might have also thought originally that Rory was going to be a lot like Lorelai, and not that he doesn't love Lorelai and he couldn't have a good relationship with her, but Lorelai has a little less in common with him than he probably would have liked. But then he realizes that Rory isn't exactly like Lorelai, so he can maybe have these other kinds of things with her that he couldn't have with his daughter before. And I think he just kind of likes that, and he's easygoing in a way, and like, you know, once in a while he's not easygoing, but he's pretty easygoing, and I think he just kind of wants to have whatever he can have with her, and he's happy with that. I also wonder if, like, maybe he didn't want to invest too much time into her because he didn't know when they were going to disappear again. Oh, that would make total sense as well. Yeah, I could see that.
I wonder also if like sometimes I wonder why the Gilmores only had one child, and if Richard was disappointed that he never had a son, because it is a very like woman focused show. Like, not to conject too much on this, but it is really interesting that it is like coming from the background they do. Presumably they would want to like pass down certain things to a child, and that would typically be a son in a very traditional WASP background. So for them to have like like a daughter and then a granddaughter subsequently, I just wonder about that.
Yeah, I think that's a good point, Sabrina. And I also was thinking about the fact that, he seems to really want to invest a lot in Rory's future by paying for her education, talking about literature and books with her. And then also, I think he sees so much potential for her, with her future career or different aspirations that she has. So perhaps that's something that he's also thinking of in his interactions with her.
Yeah. Well, we are actually closing in
Sean,
here. Yeah.
You said you wanted to talk about the moment that Lorelai and Luke met
yeah.
at the party.
Yeah, let's talk about that quickly, and then I'm gonna actually have to run, but I this time I'm going to open keep the room or I'm gonna, anybody who would like to stay in the room and continue chatting with others, we're gonna keep the room open. But yeah, so that's something I didn't necessarily have something specific I wanted to say, and more I wanted to ask all of you guys sort of what your take on that. Like, did you well, and then I mentioned it there when he walked in the door, but then I sort of feel like it got even more like when Emily was in the room, like saying like, that he was like looking at her like a what was it, like a Salisbury
porterhouse steak.
A porterhouse steak, But the way that Emily was saying it, it almost seemed like she wasn't necessarily judgmental of it. Like, she wasn't saying it in her like Emily she was more saying it with this like slight smile. And then when she saw him come in, she was looking at him. It didn't look extremely judgmental. It looked like a little more curious, but curious in like a potentially is like, is this maybe her boyfriend? Like, should I know this person? And given the fact that Luke is so not high society, I'm just sort of wondering what was going on in Emily's mind right there. I'm wondering if any of you guys sort of had any perspective on that without spoiling, without spoiling what Luke and Emily's relationship will become, because that I do not know yet. But.
Then I'm gonna bounce then. Because I'll say too much.
I think
and maybe back at like 4:30 or whatever for the next one, because I can't miss the next one considering what episode it is.
Well, the next one is not going to be at 3:30 tonight. As I mentioned, we're going to now be doing every night. We're going to be doing one at 7 p.m. Pacific time, with the exception of Fridays and Saturdays, or Saturdays and Sunday, depending on how you view your night.
Okay, so episode 7 is going to be at 8 o'clock my time.
Where are you?
Utah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah,
okay,
tomorrow.
Yeah, so you're one time zone over. So yes, that will be 8 o'clock tomorrow. Your time will be episode 7, and the same thing on Wednesday, same on Thursday, and then Friday we'll do a 7, and then we'll do a 3:30 a.m. one.
Wait, is today only Monday? Oh my gosh.
Today is Monday.
Sorry to break it to you. All right, then I'm gonna skedaddle, but I'll see you guys tomorrow. Good night.
Bye.
Night. Well, look, if answering that question is going to get too spoilery, then we can table it. But
anybody can table it. No,
Yeah,
I was just going to say, I think Emily's just surprised that she got a glimpse of what she thinks Lorelai is keeping from her. So it's kind of like a little bit of a smugness of like, you didn't want me to know about this, but I do. And she's, in her mind, she feels like she's.
So, right. So like,
I agree with that 100%.
Like, so in her mind, she's thinking like maybe that moment's more about like, I do know you. Like, I do know, like you think your mother doesn't get you, but I get you. That kind of thing.
Yeah. And you have never spoken to me about this person, but I can tell, even though you don't want to say anything.
And do you think she's right about that in that moment, right? Just in that moment, or do you think like Lorelai's like, what are you talking about? Like do you think Lorelai has any feeling or perception or any of that going on with Luke at this point?
I think she denies it because
She denies it.
Yeah.
I think
the way she
highlighted
reacted, she felt kind of happy that somebody else saw that he seemed to look at her that way.
Yeah,
right.
Even in the early episodes, she's slightly flirting with him, and sometimes the looks. And I think it's all supposed to be there subtly, because I think that is what the writers want us to think and hope for through the season. But I think that Lorelai is denying herself because, you know how you were talking the other day about how you wonder if she has male friends that aren't potential dates. I think Lorelai wants Luke to be that guy.
Right.
Because she doesn't want to spoil any kind of friendship she has with him. And so I always thought that, in the early, because when I first started watching this, I thought that's going to be the love interest right there, that guy, the diner guy. So,
because even in the interaction between Lorelai and Luke at the diner, when she invites him to the birthday, like you can see there's kind of almost a little bit of flirting there. Like,
yeah, she's like, I want you there.
Yeah, and he's
right.
like, yeah, she wants me there.
Uh-huh.
Yeah,
Okay.
I think it's one of those things where making it real feels too serious. Like if it ever became real, it would be too real,
Right.
Yeah, it's a romance trope, John. I'm telling you.
It is a romance trope. Yeah, sure. Okay. Well, great. All right. I'm going to bounce, but here's what I offer. I offer you guys the chance to stay here in the room. If anybody wants to keep talking about the episode, I know I've been just sort of like ending these rooms, but then I thought, I can make any of you a moderator here, and then you can keep the room open and continue to talk. I don't think that these rooms should necessarily just be because I've set them up. Like, this is a sort of community of fans, so I want you guys to feel like that these rooms are your rooms. So if anybody would like to stay in here and chat more about the episode, let me know. I'll make you a moderator.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to head to bed soon. It's almost midnight here, but it's good to see you all, and welcome to everyone who is just coming in for the first time, and welcome back to everyone who I'm seeing here every night. That's pretty cool. So
I was going to ask a quick question before the room ended. It has nothing to do with the episode, but I was just curious. So I was not born when Gilmore Girls premiered. I was born around season 2. So,
You're a baby.
Wow.
We're all gonna feel old.
My birthday just passed, so I don't feel like a baby. It was just this past Tuesday on the 13th, so I feel old.
Happy birthday.
Thanks. So when Rory gives Richard the Cosmo, I think that's an adorable scene. But when he's finished reading it, he says I'm in autumn. What does that mean?
Because
Fashion. It's fashion color.
Yeah, right. Isn't that like a Cosmo thing that there are different different colors, like that would be some sort of little side article or something that's
yeah,
it's like your skin tone and your eye color,
right?
What colors look good on you
For your makeup and
Maybe
clothing,
mixing out
things like
too.
that.
I think I interpreted it as something that was more what season are you, and then and talks about the all the personality traits of a person who's in autumn and all the personality traits of a person who's a summer, that kind of thing.
No,
but
it's a fashion thing.
It's fashion. So autumn is you wear cool colors, and summer you wear warm colors. It's a fashion type of thing.
Right.
Fashion, John.
Yeah, wouldn't an autumn be somebody who wears more earth tones and stuff?
Yeah.
Yeah,
And that fits in with Richard. That's what he wears.
Yeah,
That's who
exactly.
he is.
Exactly.
It totally fits in with the
weed look.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's sort of what I picked up on.
Have you read Cosmopolitan before, Regina?
No, I have not. I'm not a huge like person who's into magazines, so that's why I saw the reference come back like years later on a different show that I'm obsessed with. So it's like, so I inferred that it had to do something with either like makeup or skin tone or something, but like because I saw it here again, I wanted to ask.
Somebody on Instagram Live saying specifically it's from something in Cosmo that's called "Color Me Beautiful."
Oh.
So that actually that makes sense. And then they also said Google "Color Me Beautiful." I'm a summer.
We're gonna have John on the next episode fill out his "Color Me Beautiful," and we're gonna find out whether he's a summer.
I think we lost you there.
Or fall. Yeah.
Yeah, Regina,
Oh my
you
God.
could probably find it online if you want to check it out.
I'm gonna Google before our next episode. I'm gonna Google and find out what my color is, and I'll let you know.
Right. Then we'll compare our answers.
All right, everybody. So nobody wants to take reins of the room. If not, I'm going to just close it out.
Bedtime.
Yeah, all right, everyone.
But John, one comment. I don't know if you looked as we were watching. I scrolled down, and every single person was under the followed by speakers at one point in the room.
Oh, I love it.
So I just wanted to point that out. I noticed now there's a couple of newbies, but while we were watching the episode, everyone was under there.
That's wonderful. I want to see that. I want to see more of that.
All right.
All right, and then of course we want some newbies in here. So if you guys know of anybody who you think would enjoy this, let them know. If they need an invite to get into Clubhouse, you all should be getting like new invites every three days or so. They give you new invites.
I have too. If you know of anybody who needs any of that.
Yeah. We're using the hashtag #GInvites, hashtag #BGInvites, and you just tweet saying you have invites and just add that hashtag, and that's how people find it.
Okay.
All right, everybody. I'll see you tomorrow at 7.
Thank you,
Pacific time.
guys.
All right. Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.